how much are you going to get paid, and what are the differences in the pay? Hey guys, welcome back. So in this episode, I wanted to talk to you guys about the differences between private practice and academic practice in anesthesiology, and the difference of the pay that you're going to get, and what your day-to-day responsibilities are going to be. So one of the most common questions that I get asked is, why did I decide to go into anesthesia? Well, here's the top 5 list of things that really influenced my decision for going into anesthesia. So number 1, it's a hands-on specialty, and this is something that I enjoy doing. Procedures, working with patients directly. That's something that was a number 1 criteria for me. Number 2, an active paced day, something that's variable from day to day or even case to case, and anesthesia will give you that. Number 3, a predictable day and a lifestyle that was balanced, where I could manage both my home responsibilities and my work responsibilities and not feel overwhelmed. Number 4, my personality is such that I really don't enjoy like the clinics and having to talk to people all day long. Just not something that I found enjoyable or fun or even bearable at some points. But this specialty really provided for me to have that really brief interaction with patients, and like I said, kind of keep things moving along. The patients, you meet them, you discuss the anesthesia plan with them, and you develop that rapport. You get them off to sleep, you wake them up, and you move on. So it's a lot of like high turnover, fast pace, and I think that really, again, spoke to some of the things that made me happy. And then lastly, and this is the point of this whole video, the compensation. So how much the salary paid out compared to how much work you have to do in your day-to-day really mattered to me. So for this specialty and in this video, we're gonna really focus on the compensation, the salary part. How much are you gonna get paid? And depending on where you work, what are the differences in the pay? So I work in an academic practice setting, and that means that I work in a teaching hospital. So I work with residents and I work with medical students, instructing them on and how to give anesthesia. So that's my day-to-day basic job. And in addition to that, I'm fulfilling patient care responsibilities, and I also have some administrative responsibilities, such as attending meetings or interviewing applicants for residencies and developing a curriculum for a resident rotation, as well as formal instruction, teaching, and lectures. So those are just some of the responsibilities that go into an academic practice. But let's back up and let's really compare private practice and academic practice side by side as far as what your responsibilities are going to be and how you're going to get paid for them. So the average pay, right? Everyone wants to know, how much does an anesthesiologist make? Well, again, it depends on where you work. So I did a quick search of this website called gasworks.com, and it's kind of like a repository for jobs for anesthesia related positions. So you can find a job as a CRNA, an anesthesiologist assistant, and a physician anesthesiologist. So you can look through based on your state and find the job. So I just did a quick search of New York because that's where I work. And I put it in there, no other requirements, no filters otherwise. I just put New York and physician anesthesiologist. And I went through the list, and this is one of the results that I saw. So as you can see, it's an ambulatory surgery center position, and it's a full-time position, and this is saying it's a New York City area, so that can mean a lot of things. But let's scroll down to the most important part. How much are they offering? So this job is saying that the starting salary is $400,000 up to $450,000. So that is the range of compensation that they are providing for this position, where you're gonna have no call, no weekends, and no holidays, which sounds great, right? So I want to tell you that that is not the average at all, and this is probably not an academic institution. So let's get into why there's such a big difference in pay. So for New York, the average starting salary for an academic institution is somewhere between $250,000 to $300,000. So that is really a big chunk difference, right? So we need to know why that is, and what is it about the job requirements that make it so different between the two settings. Don't forget to like. Please do click the like. So How is the salary determined for anesthesiologists? So let's get into all the parts that make up how much money you're going to get paid. In most academic practice settings, you're going to be starting off with what we call a base salary. So on top of that, you're going to be offered other incentives and bonuses to make up your total salary. So the salary that you're seeing being offered on, let's say if you went on that job search website, will most likely be your base salary, and then they'll mention the other compensation potentials as other parts of it. So let's go back to that results screen for that job search I did. So as you can see, there's a mention of the employment status being W-2, which is a type of way that you're going to be filing your taxes. And that's usually an employee model. And it goes through your amount of call that you're going to be required to do. No first call, will not be on call, no second call. And then scrolling down further, key things to note are the other compensation, which is in the form of malpractice paid, yes, and the 6 weeks of vacation that this job provides, in addition to medical insurance and retirement plan. So that would usually be a 401k. All of those parts make up your compensation in addition to your base salary. So you're getting this certain number, the $250,000 to $300,000, plus you're getting all of these other benefits, paid vacations, your malpractice insurance, your retirement, which is key, and health insurance. Those are things that you're not gonna have to pay for outside of your salary because they automatically come out, and those are the things that you don't have to worry about in an academic practice setting. As opposed to a private practice setting, you're gonna get that high number, $400,000 to $450,000, but out of that money, you're gonna be responsible for paying for all those things, namely your malpractice insurance, your health insurance, etc. So that's all factored in. When you're looking at that number, you should be also calculating and looking up how much that's going to cost in your specific state or region and subtracting that to find out what you're really going to be taking home. Let's back up. So how is pay determined? Well, again, there's a base salary. If you're in academic practice, most likely you're going to be getting that. And that's based on how many days per week you're contracted to work. So on average for an attending anesthesiologist, it's about 4 to 5 days per week. Add on top of that your requirement to take call and your paid time off as is in your contract. So as we saw in that example, that's a 6 weeks of vacation per year. Plus you'll get some sick days and you'll get some holiday pay depending on, again, where you work. Next thing that goes into how much you get paid is the RVUs, which is a buzzword, relative value units. So this is going back to getting paid for services by insurance companies and basically the value that is assigned to the time that you're spending taking care of patients for certain types of procedures on certain types of patients. So this is kind of a nitty-gritty granular aspect of how the pay is calculated in each setting, but this is something that applies to anesthesia. So we know that every 15 minutes you are granted a unit of pay, and that unit of pay is worth a certain dollar amount. And that's calculated based on all those things I just said. So your time spent with patients, every minute counts and it's billed for. Next are incentives. So that's if you're going to be given extra money for taking call, or if you're going to be given an added overtime rate when you're working past your normal shift hours. So for me, I work from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. So that would be if I was to work after 5 p.m. That would be considered entering into overtime. So certain jobs offer that. And then lastly, but not leastly, bonuses. So this is where you can get extra payout, and it depends again on where you work. And bonuses may be paid out to anesthesiologists based on the profitability of the group, and usually based on various factors as an incentivizer, something that helps to increase productivity or basically motivate. And that's something that's across the board of every type of employment model. Whenever there's a bonus offered, it usually means that, you have to fulfill certain requirements, quotas, etc. to earn that money. So those things are still available for physicians and academic anesthesiology. They might be based on certain things like clinical productivity, other projects that you're working on outside of, again, your clinical work. That might be academic specific if you're writing chapters, or if you're publishing articles and publications to educate others about anesthesiology. Those might be some things that are considered bonus rewardable, and other evaluations and criteria. Okay, so that's how pay is determined based on all those factors. And now we're gonna compare the private practice day-to-day requirements and how you're getting paid to the academic day-to-day requirements and how you get paid. So here we go. So in private practice, your pay is typically based on productivity. So it's a, work and get paid or eat what you kill kind of model. So if you don't work, then you don't get paid. Pretty straightforward. So again, how much you work does determine how much you can get paid. And typically that means that you don't really abide by a base salary model. So again, that is pretty self-explanatory. So you're gonna be billing for what services you've actually rendered, how many anesthetics you've actually given, and what types. So there are special options in private practice which allow for you to take on a role as a partner. So this is optional partner track or buy-in option where you usually have to fulfill a contracted 2 to 3 years working for the group. And then after that, can become a partner and share in the profits and other things, but that will change how much money that you're making overall, usually in an exponentially higher way. In these job types, you can be an independent contractor and file 1099s, which is specific tax filing form, and you have to figure out what you're responsible for paying as far as your taxes go. You need to keep track of all of your withholdings, and usually your self-paid benefits have to be taken into account. So like I said, you have to take into account your health insurance, disability, malpractice, etc. and retirement, of course. So again, in private practice, you bill per case and you seek compensation for the services that you provide directly. So it's service, bill. So what's your day-to-day job going to look like as a private practice anesthesiologist? Well, you can work in several different models. Typically, you can work in a physician-only model or a physician and CRNA model, so the joint model. And in some states, the physician CRNA joint model will work in the ratio of 1 physician to 3 to 4 CRNAs. So, and it all depends on what type of center you're in, but that's a standard model. And you're also most likely required to not work in just one center in a private practice group. You can be covering multiple different hospitals or multiple different ambulatory surgery centers, different procedure locations. So that can be a part of your contract. So you're working for a main group, but you also have to cover other areas as a part of the group's contract. So that can make for a very different day every single day. So if you're looking for variety, something that's like, pretty interesting as far as like what you're doing Monday versus Tuesday, that model will really fulfill that and you'd be pretty happy with that. Your workday might be different, so you may not be working from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. You may have a slightly abbreviated workday, so let's say 7 to 3, and you may not work 5 days a week. You may take call. It really just depends on the different groups and what their model is. So it's usually the case where, again, going back to billing for what you do, you want to work a lot. So you want to work a lot so that you can get paid a lot, so that you can be able to afford all the other expenses that you need to pay out of your paycheck and make a high salary. So that's going to be the name of the game. So work a lot, make a lot, and then you go from there. So academic practice, what's the difference? Well, on your day-to-day, you basically work with, as I said before, residents, and you can, in some institutions, work with CRNAs, and then definitely medical students, because usually academic practices are affiliated with medical schools, and again, they're teaching institutions. So that's going to be a mainstay of your job responsibility, especially as residents start coming in the new academic year, which usually starts in July. You're going to be working with them very closely, teaching them all the basics of anesthesia in a clinical setting, and helping them get pretty comfortable with taking care of patients every day. So in some settings, the medical school also contributes towards your compensation or your base salary. I'm going to show you guys some examples from this really great article that shows different models of how you're going to get paid as an anesthesiologist depending on where you work. So in academic practices, usually the anesthesia department or the medical school, or in some cases, both the anesthesia department and the medical school contribute towards your salary. The pay model is usually that of, again, the base pay, so your base salary plus or minus your incentives. And again, the incentives are pay per call, pay after hours, and if you're taking calls, depending on whether or not they are overnight or weekend calls, compensation for the different types. So that's part of your base pay. But again, remember, academic centers usually have comprehensive benefits packages, and that include malpractice insurance, 401k, and sometimes they match your 401k and based on where you are, so that's something to really ask about. And then other insurances like health insurance and disability insurance can also be covered as a part of your whole compensation package on top of your base pay. In this setting, you're going to be filing your W-2 form for taxes, and that again is kind of based on having this base salary employee model. So what's your day-to-day job going to be like as an academic anesthesiologist? Well, I can tell you very clearly what my day-to-day is like. So I usually, again, work with residents, and I work with CRNAs as well, medical students. So it's a mixed bag. Every day is different. Some days I'm alone in the OR, and I enjoy all of those different types of ways of giving anesthesia. I think it makes everything, again, very varied, very active and involved, and that's what I found was really necessary for me to be happy in my career, something that is very much variable from day to day, case to case, as I said. So other responsibilities are going to be, for me, instruction, so academic instruction in the form of actual formal teaching sessions, didactics, lectures, case conferences, discussions, etc. And then also residency rotation, curriculum formation. It's a lot to say that basically you just work on like what they're going to learn when they're learning about this, and try to formulate that into a nice package. And then also just being on different committees within the hospital, which I really love. So I enjoy just being a part of things outside of clinical medicine as well. So I have the opportunity to do that in an academic setting. And in addition to that, even though there isn't really time built into your day-to-day to do this, so this is things that you have to do on your own time outside of work, and that's in the realm of like if you want to be involved in clinical work, publications, etc. So you're still responsible for your clinical activities and taking care of patients every day. But on top of that, if you are getting involved in any type of academic output project, like writing up a case report or participating in research or reviewing, editing a chapter, writing a chapter, those are things that you're going to do outside of work. And of course, those are things that are incentivized in academic practice. So again, that's going back to bonuses. So working in an academic practice can really provide you with many ways, many streams of fulfillment and of course income. But you want to think about your goals as a practicing physician and where you would feel most comfortable, most fulfilled in your day-to-day job, and really take that into consideration when you're deciding where you're gonna work. Okay, so to wrap up this video, I really wanted to point out this great article that really inspired this episode and has a bunch of really key points about what you need to think about when you're deciding upon where you're going to work as an anesthesiologist, and really does lead into like figuring out what to look for in your contract when you do get a job and you're trying to sign on for this first job as a resident and you have no idea what to look for or what you need to make sure is there. So I think that this article is great. So it's called How Do You Get Paid in Anesthesiology? Private Practice versus Academic Medicine. I'll leave a link to this article in the description below, so be sure to check that out. Okay, so to wrap it up, and those who stayed to the end, this is the really important information that you needed to know about how much you're gonna get paid in different settings. So the first example that she provides for reimbursement in academic medicine, example 1 is a base salary from the medical school of $100,000 and a 401k retirement, plus a base from the Department of Anesthesia, which is $100K, so that makes $200. And then there's incentive pay for solo time, calls, doing other procedures, and the RVUs that we talked about. And that's an additional 50 to 100K. So that person in that academic practice is gonna make about 250 to 300K. The next example is a base that's a little bit higher from the department, 250, and a base from the medical school of 50. So that's starting off 300. And then your incentive pay, which makes you bump up 50 to 100K, and then bonuses, depending on the profitability of the department, which was anywhere between 25 to 50K. So in that academic institution, anesthesiologist is making 375 to 400K per year. And then lastly, you can see there's 100K from the med school, 50 to 100 from the department, and they pay overtime as well as clinical days. In that calculation, there's no incentive pay, so they don't really have pay for extra call or pay for nights, weekends, etc. But they do pay a bonus of 25 to 50K per year. So in this institution, probably a really reputable, big name institution, the average salary is going to be 200 to 250K. So it just depends on a lot of different factors, you know, with your institution and what's going on financially there, but you're gonna have a number of options to choose from. The job market is very, very variable, and you really need to look into the details of each job and what you're gonna get at the end of it all, what you're gonna actually take home and put in your account at the end of your paycheck. Deductions. And then in this article, it's very, very key. She mentions it at the end, and I think that's something that you guys should look at. And there are sign-on bonuses and sign-on bonuses. So take a look at that, and it really varies on where you're gonna work, but usually private practices offer sign-on bonuses. There's always a stipulation for that, so make sure that you look for that stipulation in your contract. So if you're getting money straight out, there's usually something that you have to fulfill to make sure that you can keep the money, or you'll have to pay it back. So with that, guys, I thank you so much for watching. I really hope this was an informative video for you. I know there are a lot of questions still that remain about private practice and academic practice and the pay. I really hope you guys ask those questions in the comments so that we can continue this discussion there. Don't forget to like. Please do click the like. It really helps to push the video out to others that may want to find out about this, and just to also help grow the channel. Take care.